Welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I am your host, Eitan Berger. Kibbutz Contemporary dance company KCDC, one of the leading dance companies in the world, is widely identified with the work of artistic director Rami Be'er. His exclusive and unique choreographic character has become the company's trademark both in Israel and abroad. With its technically strong and physically eclectic cast of dancers and its dynamic sensibility, KCDC characterizes Israeli dance at its best, performing regularly in the most respected theaters and leading festivals worldwide.
We are in Kibbutz Gaton, where the Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company was founded more than 40 years ago by a special lady, Yehudit Arnon. She was Holocaust survivor that came to Israel in 1948, and she was founded the company in 1973. I born in Israel, in the kibbutz. I was her student from an early age, and she was my first teacher. I joined the company 30 years ago and took over the artistic direction 20 years ago. I'm the choreographer and the artistic director of the Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company. Here, in this unique place, Kibbutz Gaton, we are working, living, and develop a dance village. In this dance village, besides the main company, we have the second company. The second company is the company that perform for education program, whole family program, and from the second company also I take the dancers who fit for the main company from the second company. In Dance Village, we have different program. We have a program called Journey, Masa program. It's a 5 months program for 30 dancers from all over the world that come every 5 months and learn the repertoire and of the Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company, living in the kibbutz, touring in Israel. We have twice a year this program. We have a big school here of 400 students from children 6 years old until 18. We have here a workshop for Israeli dancers. We have a summer course, a big summer course for students from Israel and abroad. The company is international dance company, is touring all over the world. Few years ago, we also performed in South Africa. And just 2 weeks ago, we came back from United States, and next month we go again to tour to Europe and to Korea. The two companies together perform more than 200 performances each year, and I encourage, beside my artistic work, I encourage also young choreographers and young artists to work here in the dance village, and also to collaborate with the different dancers. And I think that to work with young artists, young dancers, and also experienced dancers who come from different disciplines, I believe to expose the dancers to maximum variety, to maximum possibility to see all the possibilities that is unlimited in creation and in from different influences. what happened here in this place is really unique, and I invite every person who are interested in art, in dance, in creation, to come and visit us here in Kibbutz Gaton, in north of Galilee, 8 kilometers from the Lebanon border. I'm waiting for you.
Recovering from severe depression in a mental institution, Rafael Lomas connected with his inner creativity and began sculpting. He was fascinated with the relationship between painting and photography, and like the modernist artist Man Ray once said, "I paint what cannot be photographed, and I photograph what I do not wish to paint." In Rafael Lomas's case, there might be another factor instead: the desire to reach a synthesis between these two forms of creative activity. Collaborating with Rami Be'er and the KCDC Dance Company, Rafael has created a new series of artworks where he tries to satisfy his ingrained tendencies to seek unity between these two mediums.
I'm a sculptor. Nobody's perfect. And saying that it means that in a certain point of me doing sculptures, I arrived to a series of working with chairs, manipulating chairs. It mainly happened when I came back. I returned to Israel in 2006 after not living here for many years. And doing that, I started to cut a chair in a way that each half stands by itself, which for me it's a miracle, because usually as a sculptor, when I send my work to galleries or museum or outside my studio, I'm supposed to write the dimension, you know, how much, what's the size. And suddenly I arrived to an object with endless possibilities of size. So I didn't know what kind of size is my object. But also very much the space in between each half of a chair was intriguing to try to see what kind of gravity this space has, what kind of happening could happen in this zone. So since 2007, I'm collaborating with my son, that he is a photographer. And we invited some dancers when I moved in the beginning to Klil, to the north, in the Galil. So I approached Rami, and he was very open-minded to collaborate between a sculptor and dancing and movement, which usually are looked at two very far-away disciplines. Although in sculpture there's a lot of movement, and in dancing there's a lot of stillness, and to try to maybe create a third language in between. Not sculptures that dancers are touching and moving, but a third language that will create a common space. Because I think within sculptures, there's a lot of notion and movement, the creative movement. And within movement, there's a lot of stillness. There's a lot of, how do you say, pause. It's still, it's unmoving. In fact, to be able to touch a movement, you have to frozen it for a second. So to be able to touch the movement within the sculptures and the unmovement in the dancing, to try to see where they could combine. And this is what is happening now. We started a few days ago, a week ago in fact, by inviting dancers to relate to those two half split chairs that you could sit. It's also apart, but it also stands by itself, to see where it could lead us. Creativity is, for me, is a thing that unfortunately I do on a daily basis for the last more than 20 years, and it's a miracle. It's like a unique zone. And trying to break down, not because of taking away the magic, but trying to understand, to touch this magic, to try to figure out what kind of process is it. For me, the half-split chair that each half stands by itself but still relate is a very unique, I think it's a unique area that maybe could lead to some hints about creativity. So for me, and I do know, at least from my experience, that creativity has the ability to contain different disciplines, or disciplines that we don't relate as, that have a common background, or different qualities that we think, you know, good and bad, or big and small, and to find a way to integrate them in one. So for me, there's this zone in between those half chairs is a magic place to try to investigate what could occur there. And by inviting dancers, and also for me, you know, usually sculptures, it's an object you don't touch, right? It's behind, it's in a gallery, in a museum, you are not supposed even to touch it. And even the fact to invite dancers to sit on sculptures, to enter there, to break them sometimes out of work, and to see what kind of movement they could bring, teaches me on a personal level a lot about my own. I could see things that I couldn't see before. And I think this collaboration between two different disciplines, trying to integrate together, would hopefully lead to or new language or some more understanding about creativity.
Artist Rafael Lomas's work has been exhibited all over the world. Throughout his life's work, there has always been one constant principle that his creations revolve around, and that is the relationship between stillness and movement.
Dealing with creativity on a daily basis, daily studio base, working, my past, my religious past, like entered through the window and surprised me, this beautiful knowledge of the rabbinical people that were not supposed to have any knowledge about creativity because they were dealing with other issues. And it's what I at that time thought. And one of the examples, which is very easy for me to give, is really in Pirkei Avot, this short book of wisdom of the father. And it's a very beautiful book because part of the wisdom is very practical notion. You should do 1, 2, 3. And from the other side, it's really imaginary stuff, like you don't know what they were doing or drinking before. And one of the phrases I want to really to tell you about is this 10th thing that in Pirkei Avot it says that God created. And I mean, in the twilight time between the Friday night and Saturday. It's the first week of creation. And as we know, God, I remember when I read it for the first time, God created the world in 6 days. He was working very hard, 6 days, creating everything that exists. And then it says Friday was ending, the sun was down, and just before the night came, so it's a very short time, it's like a matter of seconds, the twilight, God created 10 more things. And I remember when I read it for the first time, I said, that's great. If it's good for God to create things in the last minute, it's good with me, so it's fine. But rather than that, I remembered thinking to myself, what could he more create? Like, if everything exists, what else could be done? Right? What's the story? And there's a very interesting list of those 10 things, like the rainbow and the word and the language. And going over this list, I really realized that whatever was created, those 10 things are all different kind of connections. So if everything exists, the only thing that me or us as human being could recreate are new connections between things, because everything is here. So dealing with creativity is finding new connections, or making or discovering or rediscovering new connections, and going back to the chairs and the notion of movement within creativity, and inviting dancers to this new zone. So movement and dancers and sculptures to make a connection is in a way a magical place for me, and has to do on a personal level as me as an artist, but very much also in my roots as a Jewish being. A lot of my works has really to do with the notion of movement within creativity. I could give you an example. I was because doing sculptures, making sculptures, there are two major ways. One is taking materials and adding them together, putting together, or taking a piece of wood or marble and taking, taking off. So doing sculpture had two ways, or adding or taking off. In a certain point in my life, in 1997, I started a series which had a third method of doing sculptures by taking wheels, old, huge metal wagon wheels, agriculture wheels, and making sculptures only by cutting and bending them. I remember starting this series on 97. I said, that's great, maybe it's a new way of making sculptures, and I couldn't imagine that 15 years after, I'll still go on and doing it, because I realized that within the limitation of cutting and bending wheels without adding or welding or missing material, there are endless possibilities, which is again like the gap in the half chairs, because me as a human being, I know what are limitations, I know what are possibilities. Usually they don't kiss, they don't match, right? Or you have possibilities or you have limitation. And here, within the limitation of only a wheel, only cutting and bending, there are endless possibilities of doing endless wheels. And this is for me a unique place to be in. So the notion of where creativity happens and the magic of creativity, being able to bring endless possibilities within limitation, was a very starting point also for their chair series, which I began doing maybe 10 years after. Being human being is touching your limits. And touching your limits and finding possibilities within the limitation, this is, I think, in each one, and still remain human. This is for me, one of my goals. Yeah, and I think, what is the limitation? I mean, it's very easy to say, but limitation is our ability to feel, how much you could intellectually go, how much you could spread generosity, how much you could detach from the circumstances you live in and find your own space, and spaces that doesn't echo, because we live in society that, the selfie, everything echoes so fast, so we are not used to have our own space in a way which I think is essential. It's essential really to each one of us to be able to find his balance and his identity, not only in related to, but basically to himself. Balance is beauty, but balance, because it's a living thing, so it's moving all the time. It's changing, right? The balance is like the morning is not the noon, and the noon is not the evening, and it's shifting. So being able to remain balanced within the notion of change all the time and being aware of it, I think is beauty, and I think creativity and art has a lot to say about it. And cutting a chair in a way that this object will have endless possibilities and no limits, but still to try to find new balance between the two parts, I think and seeing beauty in it is really relevant for this aspect.
According to the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 5, verse 1, and expounded upon by Kabbalah, the agency of creation was divine speech, the 10 utterances through which God spoke the world into existence. The world was created with 10 utterances. What does this come to teach us? Certainly, it could have been created with a single utterance. However, this is in order to make the wicked accountable for destroying a world that was created with 10 utterances, and to reward the righteous for sustaining a world that was created with 10 utterances. That's all we have time for this week's episode of Simcha. As always, it's been a pleasure having you join us. If you'd like to catch up on any previous week's episodes, please log on to our website, www.spiritsister.co.za. From me, Eitan Berger, and the whole team here at Simcha, have a great week and goodbye.